Hi guys, welcome to today's video. In today's video, we are going to be designing this really nice admin dashboard you see here. The contents of the admin dashboard is not specific to any type of admin user, but looking at what's on this, it's looking like a HR system or probably a CRM. But regardless of what you're trying to achieve for your admin dashboard design, this tutorial is going to give you a basic understanding of how to structure your layout. Here we're going to have a side menu. This side menu is completely created with auto layout and they are all components. You can have a sub menu item. If I click on this messages tab here, or this messages menu item, you can see there's a drop down and there's a little transition on this indicator here on the right. Every single thing here is going to be designed from scratch except for the graph section, where we have the graph and the charts, which is going to be left out for upcoming videos because this particular video was already too long. So please, if this is your first time on the channel, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe and turn on the notification bell if you find any of this video helpful. So without further ado, let's get started with the video. So to start designing our dashboard, I have a new Figma file open here, and the first thing I'm going to do is to quickly rename this file to dashboard design. And I'm going to go ahead to paste in some of the style guides we're going to be using, things like the colors and some of the icons that we are going to be using for this dashboard design. Right, so once I have this, we can then start designing our dashboard. So to start designing our dashboard, the first thing we are going to do is to bring in our frame. I'm going to click on frames and I'm going to pick this desktop frame here that says 140 by 1024. I do like to make sure I cater for the top bars of our browser, so I don't like to use the exact height of this desktop frame. So I tend to cut the height short from 1020 to something like 850. It seems more realistic when you're trying to preview this. So I'm going to rename this frame to dashboard. And once we have this, typically what we want to have first is our navigation bar, right? Want to create a navigation bar. So I'm going to click on a frame and I'm going to draw out the navigation bar on this frame. It's going to be a height of 60 pixels because I don't like the navigation bar to be very large, and a width of 1440 as usual. I'm going to fill the background with a white color, and I'm going to grab the logo icon from this assets panel here. I'm going to copy this. I'm going to click on the navigation bar and I'm going to paste it here. All right, I'm going to click on the navigation bar and give it some drop shadow. Click on effects. I'm going to give it a drop shadow. I'm going to change the blur to something like 20 and reduce the opacity to 5%. Here we can see a little drop shadow underneath this navigation bar. But this typically won't be here because we are going to need to put our side menu. So I'm going to move this a little away first. Then I would draw out the side menu. For the side menu, I'm going to click on this frame here, the frame tool, and I'm going to draw out the side menu. And I'm going to make sure I keep it at the height of 850 so that it uses the exact height of this desktop, and a width of 256. I'm also going to fill it with a white background, and I'm going to make sure it's on top of our navigation frame. So as you can see here, it tends to fall inside the navigation frame. I'm going to move it up. Then I'm going to rename this frame to side menu. Also the navigation, I'm going to rename it to top navigation. Once I've done that, I'm going to pick this logo and move it to our side menu. But before I do that, I'm also going to give the side menu some shadow to give it that elevation from the screen. I'm going to click on effects. I'm going to come here and do almost the same thing, but this time I'm going to be working with the y-axis, not the with the x-axis and not the y-axis. For the y-axis, I'm going to set it to 0, and for the x-axis, I'm going to give it like a 4 value, and the block would be something like 10 or 20. I'm going to adjust this to 10. So we do have something like this. Or what I could do is I'm going to turn this off and just give it a bottom stroke for now. I'm going to reduce the thickness of the stroke a little bit, and I think this is fine. We're going to have a bottom stroke for the top navigation bar and a little elevation for the side menu. So I'm going to pick this admin logo here, and I'm going to move it all the way on the side menu. I'm going to make sure I scale it to fit the entire width of the side menu. And I'm going to give it the same height as the navigation bar. So I'm going to make it a fixed height, and I'm going to make it 60. I'm going to give it a padding, a left and right padding of, let's say, 20 pixel, for instance, or 40 pixel, so that it fits in the middle. And I'm going to fit it at the top of this side menu. I'm also going to give it a bottom stroke. I'm also going to give it a bottom stroke. I'm going to reduce the thickness of the stroke, and I think this is fine. So we do have our dashboard design coming out nice. So there are a few things you might want to consider. For example, where you want to position the profile icon or the profile detail of whoever is logged into this dashboard. So there are some dashboards where you find the profile detail on the side menu here, which is the image of the user or the details or the name of the user and stuff like that. And there are some dashboards where you tend to find that information at the top right corner of your navigation bar. You can do this regardless of what you're trying to achieve. But in my opinion, I feel like if you do have a lot of content on your dashboard, something like a CRM that has a whole lot of content, where on your side menu you have to scroll to get some of the information you need, you might want to move the user's profile up to the top navigation bar so that you have enough room on your side menu, right? So what I mean is, for example, you might have informations like this. I'm just going to paste in this information on this side menu. You might have the user information like this on your side menu, or you might want to put it at the top. But for this particular design, I'm going to be putting it on our navigation bar here. So I'm going to grab an avatar here. I'm going to pick one of these, and I'm going to paste it here. I'm going to scale it up to like 36 pixel on both the height and the width, and I'm going to put it at the far right here. I'm also going to grab an icon, this drop down icon here, and I'm going to paste it just by the side. You might also want to display the name of the user. In my case, I'm just going to put my name. Let's say Femi John, for instance, and I'm going to place it just next to the avatar. I'm going to select this name and the avatar. I'm going to hit Shift A to create an auto layout on it. I'm going to do the same thing for the icon. Select the icon, hit Shift A to create an auto layout, and make sure they are all properly aligned to the center. Right. The next thing I'm going to do is to bring in a notification icon for the dashboard. And I think this is coming out great. We do have our top navigation bar. We are still going to revisit our margin on the left and the right side of this, but with this I think we have our top navigation bar sorted out for this particular dashboard design. Now we can go into creating our items for our side menu. So before we move on to creating the menu items, I would like to make a few adjustments to our navigation bar. I'm going to put it on top of the side menu, so it's going to look like this, and I'm going to make sure this particular frame, which is the logo, is on the top navigation bar, so it's going to look more like this rather than the way it was initially. So for this navigation bar, I would like to set a specific margin, right and left. So I'm going to click on the layout grid. I'm going to set it to a column, and it's going to be a count of 24, and I'm going to have a margin of 20. Usually I use a minimum of 50 up to 100, even up to 150, but since it's a dashboard, you want to make enough room for the informations, so I think a margin of 20 or 40 at most is okay. I'm going to select the contents here. I'm going to use the tool layouts to align them properly, then I can move it to the far right to fit with where the margin ends. So I'm going to turn off this margin, and we do have our top navigation bar okay for now. So I'll start creating the items for the side menu. So for the side menu, the first thing we want to do is to create the side menu item. The first one here is going to be our dashboard. So before we start creating that, I would want to make sure, because I want the side menu items to be a component, right? And I want the components to have some of the component properties, such as the instance swap. And to use that, I'm going to make sure all our icons here are all components. So I'm going to go ahead to make these icons components of different variants. So I'm going to go ahead to make these icons a component. And to do that, first, I think I'm just going to get rid of these two sets of icons, which is the blue and the white. I'm going to delete them, and I'm going to make all these icons here a component. I'm going to select every single one of them. I'm going to click on this component, and I'm going to create multiple components. Once I do that, it's going to create all these icons as components. So I'm going to start from the very first one that we need. I'm going to click on it, and I'm going to add a variant by clicking on this variant icon here. So it's going to give me a variant 2 option here, and I'm going to click on this little plus to create a third variant. I'm going to do the same thing for this. I'm going to add a variant, add another one, the same thing for this, and I'm going to go ahead to do the same thing for all these components we just created here. And I'm going to show you guys the reason why I'm doing this when we start using these icons. And of course, some of you might have guessed why I'm doing this, so that I can have different colors and I can use them. I can switch these variants while using them in our components. So once I'm done creating different variants of our components, the next thing I'm going to do here is to make sure I have different color variations of this. So I'm going to select all of the second variants in all the components, and I'm going to give them a different color. So I'm going to click on the select one. I'm going to select this blue color here, this accent blue color here. So we do have that for I'm going to select this accent blue color up here. We do have our second variance, all the same color. I'm going to select the third variance for all the icons, and I'm also going to change the color of this third variance so that we can switch between variants to select the specific color that suits whatever we are designing for at that moment. For this, I'm going to make it white, and obviously we are not going to see the white variance because the background is white. So once I have this, we can then start creating our menu item. So the first thing we are going to have here is a dashboard. Or since it's going to be a component, I'm just going to rename this to menu item, right? Then I'm going to pick one of these icons. Let's say the very first one here, which is the dashboard icon. I'm going to select both of these, and I'm going to hit Shift A to create an auto layout on them. I'm going to position it in the middle by clicking on this center alignment here. And from here, what we want to do is we want to add the padding to the top, bottom, left, and right. So I'm going to come to this padding section, hold Command and click so that we can edit all four sides. And I'm going to give it a padding of 8 and give it a spacing of, let's say, 26, for instance. So once we have this, I'm definitely going to just space this out a little bit more, and I'm going to move it to left alignment, so it's left aligned. And I'm going to just spread this out to contain a certain percentage of this, and to be able to find out that we can also give this side menu a layout grid. I'm going to give it a column layout grid, a margin of, let's say, 10. We can give the layout grid of 12, count of 12, or let's say 8. I think that works. So we can spread this out up to this point. So we do have a menu item. I'm going to make this menu item a component. Before that, I'm going to round up the corners a little bit. To like 4. And I'm going to make this particular menu item a component. So I'm going to click on this side menu item. I'm going to turn off the layout grid. And for this component, what we basically want to be doing is to be switching these icons and the text. So I'm going to add component properties to this particular menu item component. I'm going to rename this to menu item. And to add a property to this, I'm going to click on this layer, and I'm going to click on this icon here that says create instance swap property. So I'm going to click on it, and here you're going to see we can give the instance swap a name. I can call it menu item icon. So if you click on this, you're going to see all of the icons we created, all of the icons we turned into a component on our board. And this is exactly the reason why we made all those icons a component, so that we can create an instance swap property on our component. Because if those icons are not components, you won't be able to see them here while choosing an instance. So I'm going to leave this dashboard icon for this, and I'm going to click on create property. I'm also going to click on the title, which is the text of this menu item, and I'm going to go to content here, and I'm going to create a text property. I'm going to call it menu item text, and of course you can give it whatever name that fits what you're doing. So we have our components, we have our menu item components here. What we then want to do is to start replacing these components with the actual thing. So I'm going to create a duplicate, which is an instance of this component, and I'm going to start renaming the components to the actual thing we need. So for this very first one, we want a dashboard, because we do have a dashboard icon there. I'm going to rename this to dashboard, and as you can see, I'm changing the values from the side menu here, because we do have a text property on this component, so I can rename it from here. Once I'm done with this, for the next menu item, I'm going to come here and select a different icon. The next one is going to be this task icon, and I'm going to change the name from dashboard to task. I'm going to select both of these, and I'm going to hit Shift A on them so that I can select and keep using Control D to create more duplicates of this. So for the next item, I'm going to duplicate this, and for the next item, we're going to have a user icon. I'm going to select a user icon, and I'm going to rename this to user. I'm going to duplicate it, and for the next one here, I'm going to change the icon from user to message, and the text to messages. And from here, I'm just going to skip the video up to the part where I have completely imputed all the menu items that we need, so that I don't waste much of your time. I'm just going to make the video a little faster from here until I'm done putting up all the side menu items that we need. Now once I'm done creating all our side menu items, as you can see, I'm going to select the main component text here, and I'm going to change the color of that to this dark blue text color here. Okay, as you can see, this is coming out nice. We do have all our side menu items. I'm going to reduce the spacing between them, and the next thing I want to work on now, I'm going to increase it a little bit to give it a little bit of breathing space. The next thing I want to work on now is for items that have sub menu items. We're going to work on having sub menu items to them and the indicator. So I'm going to select this icon here, this arrow icon. I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to come to our main component here, and I'm going to paste it in it. You can see that then it shows on all of this, but I don't want all of the menu items to have this indicator. Only specific ones, the ones who have the ones with sub menu items. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this text and the initial icon on this component. I'm going to hit Shift A, then I'm going to do the same thing, select the arrow icon and hit Shift A on it. So for this, I'm going to come here and I'm going to make this spacing mode from part to space between, and for the width I'm going to come from fixed to fill container. It then spreads this particular arrow item to the far right of this menu item container. So once I have this, I'm going to select this entire thing and I'm going to come to this drop down menu here and click on the vector icon in this drop down. I wouldn't want to set a visibility to the drop down. It's going to cause the distortion on this particular alignment. So I'm going to click on the vector icon in the drop down and I'm going to click on this layer icon here and I'm going to set it from show vector or show, I'm going to call it show sub menu icon, and I'm going to set it to false by default. So for sub menu items where we need to show that, for example, let's say this task, for example, I'm going to select it and I can then turn on this particular icon. So as you can see, our dashboard menu is coming out nice, and we can move on to other things for our dashboard. All right, so from here, what I want to do next is to create our sub menu items. I'm just going to turn off the visibility of this, and I think the sub menu items is going to be on our messages. I'm going to create a sub menu items on our messages, and to do that, I'm going to duplicate this menu item component here, and I'm going to detach its instance, and I'm going to create it as a component all over again. But this time I'm going to but this time I'm going to use icons like this. I'm going to make this buttons different components, create multiple components on this because I want to use them. Then the next thing I'm going to do now is to click on this here, and I'm going to frame selection. I'm going to frame this selection where this icon item is, because I want to maintain the structure of this menu item. So you get to understand what I mean. I'm going to pick one of these icons. This is what I want to use for our sub menu items. I'm going to pick the first one here. I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to click on this frame. I'm going to go into the layer where the icon is, and I'm going to paste to replace. So once I have that, I'm going to position it at the center of the frame here. And for the sub menu item, I want to call this sub menu item. I'm also going to select it, and I'm going to give it make it a component. But before that, I'm going to reduce the padding on the top and bottom to 4 pixels. So I have something like this. I'm going to leave this icon at the far right, just in case you want to create a sub menu item on the sub menu item, which is very possible but not advisable. So I'm just going to leave it like this, and I'm going to rename this to sub menu item. I'm also going to create it as a component. Now we have our sub menu item as a component. So I'm going to duplicate this. I'm going to make this particular section here as an instance swap. So I'm going to create instance swap on this, and I'm going to select some preferred values for this particular one, which is going to be these boxes here, and I'm going to create property. Now on this, we can easily swap the icons in this spot by selecting this entire frame okay, this is not the instance of it, so I'm just going to delete it. Now I'm going to create an instance of this particular component, sub menu item component we just created. And as you can see, we have our preferred values here that we can select from. So the first one is going to be draft. You can also create a text property on this sub menu item by clicking on the text, the sub menu item text, and coming to content section here, clicking on this and say text. I'm just going to create it like this. Then I'm going to select this, and for the text I'm going to call this draft, and I'm going to create a couple more duplicates for this. For the next one, for this next one, I'm going to call it scheduled. For this next one, I'm going to call it scheduled. Then I'm going to swap this to maybe the purple ellipse. I'm going to select both of these, hit Shift A to create an auto layout on them. I'm going to make the spacing to be 0 for now. I'm going to hit Command D to create a duplicate. I'm going to rename this duplicate to sent. Change the ellipse to this green ellipse, and I'm going to create another duplicate, change the contents to archive, for instance, and change the color of the ellipse. So I have a frame containing our sub menu items. Now, if I want to create a sub menu item on this message here, what I'm going to do is to click on this messages instance, create a duplicate. Once I do that, I'm going to select this duplicate. I'm going to select this duplicate and select this frame, and I'm going to hit Shift A to create an auto layout on them. I'm going to reduce the spacing to be 0. Now I have this. I'm then going to make this another component on its own. So I'm going to click on create component, and I'm going to create an instance of this component. Now for this, I'm going to set this particular section here where I have the sub menu items all in one frame. I'm going to rename this frame to sub menu items. Sub menu items. So this particular section where I have the sub menu items, I'm going to go to the height, and I'm going to set the height to fixed height. I'm going to set the height to 0, and you can see it changes to 1 because you cannot have a height of 0. Then I'm going to select this particular section, and I'm going to clip its content. So basically what we're trying to achieve here is we're going to have by default this particular message tab here, but once you click on it, you get to open up this section here. But as you can see, this particular arrow is supposed to change its positioning to be pointing maybe down or up once we open this up. But we can't change the angle because it's in the component. So if I select this now, you see that this particular rotation section is disabled because this is a component and we can't edit its instance. So what I'm going to do to solve this is I'm going to go to this particular section where I have this icon. I'm going to duplicate this, and I'm going to change the angle of this to, let's say, 90. So it's going to completely face down. Then I'm going to copy this particular icon here, and I'm going to go to the main components where we have this. I'm going to turn the visibility on so that I can see. Then I'm going to paste it here. Right. Let me turn off the visibility of the other one. Then I want to make sure it's properly aligned with the walls of the existing one. So once I've done that, I'm just going to turn it off as usual. So we have these two icons here. So on opening of this sub menu items, I'm going to select this particular icon. I'm going to turn off the existing one and turn on the one we just added. Once we have this, we can then create a prototype on this particular component. So I can rename these components to sub menu item drop down, for instance. I'm going to select this particular first variant here, and I'm going to switch to the prototype mode. I'm going to connect the wires from the first variant to the second variant. It's going to be a smart animate, and I'm just going to leave it like that. I'm going to return the favor by clicking on this tab here and connecting it back to the very first variant. I'm going to leave it as smart animate. Now we have prototyped our drop down menu for messages. What I'm then going to do is I'm going to click on this. I'm going to copy this particular component, or you could go to your assets tab and bring in this particular component, this messages drop down here. You can bring it in, cut it, then come to this section where we have it on this side nav menu here. Then what you can do is right click and paste to replace. Once you've done that, you should have this prototype section of our drop down in your messages tab. So I'm going to select this entire dashboard and click on this play prototype so that we can see if what we just prototyped actually works fine. As you can see, this is our admin dashboard. If you click on the messages tab, you can see, and we have this little transition in the arrow that we created here. So you can see the drop down works perfectly fine, and other drop downs just move down the screen. This looks a little packed, so what you could do is you can increase the spacing or reduce the font size. So I'm just going to switch back to our designs, and for this section here, I'm just going to increase the spacing of this particular guys to, let's say, 8 pixels for instance. I'm also going to increase this component so that it doesn't look clustered. And I'm going to play the design again to see if this works perfectly fine. As you can see, the drop down works perfectly fine. The spacing to, let's say, 6 or 4. And I'm going to increase the spacing between these major items to 10 pixels. So let's check this out. And I think I'm satisfied with what we have here. So guys, this is how you create a sub menu item drop down for your dashboard. Now we are then going to start adding our dashboard cards and our statistics. All right, so after we've completely created the drop down, the sub menu drop down items, looking at this, I would like to reduce the size of the text of our drop down menu items. I think it's 16 currently. If you have a dashboard that have a lot of content, it's okay to use up to 14 pixels just so that you have enough space. I've seen dashboards that use 13 pixels just to minimize or to maximize space, because you're going to be representing a lot of data and a lot of stuffs. So there's going to be a whole lot of text on the dashboard. So they tend to use smaller text so that you can easily show as many things as possible. So for this drop down menu items, I'm just going to use 14 pixels. So I'm going to scale everything down a little bit. I'm going to then edit the sub menu item text size also down to 14 pixels. And I'm also going to reduce the length of this. I'm going to use like 220. And I'm also going to scale this in a little bit. I'm going to do the same thing for this. I'm going to make it 220, and I'm going to scale this in a little bit. So I have something that looks like this. And I think this is fine for me. So the next thing we want to do is to start creating contents for this dashboard. Like, we'll have to show the kind of data I want to represent. For this particular design, I'm not going to be specifically showing any type of dashboard, but looking at this concept, I think this is taking the path of a HR management system, a HR dashboard or something like that. So I'm just going to create a basic layout to represent the kind of information I want to show. But basically, once you have your data or you have the informations you want to display, obviously we all do know that you need to have your information architecture before you start displaying your data, and that is going to give you an idea of how you're going to structure your content before you actually start knowing what kind of cards, the number of cards to create, and what exactly to show on the cards. But in my case, I'm just going to paste in the layouts I'm going to be using. So I'm going to paste that in, and I'm going to be using a layout that looks something like this. It's going to be 2 columns, and for the first column we're going to have 3 small columns on it, then this large one, and this very slim rectangle below. Then we're going to have these other columns on the right. So this is what it's going to look like. So we are then going to start designing the individual cards for this layout and every other thing. I'm not going to go in details with the components we are going to be creating for this dashboard because we've already taken too much time. But as time goes on, we're going to be creating specific components for dashboards on the channel. So please do stick around. So let's go. Let's create the first card for this particular admin dashboard here. So for this, I'm going to change the color of this to let's see, we have card 1 here. I'm going to click on card 1. I'm going to change the color of this to card 1 so that we can see what we're working with. And for the text, I'm just going to put in a random text. Let's say 1250 for instance. I'm going to make this semi-bold, and I'm going to increase the font size to 20 pixels. I'm going to increase the font size to 20 pixels. Once I've done that, I'm going to bring in the corresponding icon for this, which is going to be this particular icon here. I'm going to copy that and I'm going to paste it. You could also use, you could create this card as a component so that you can repeat the component across these 3 variations of cards that we have here. So I'm going to have this, and I'm going to have a text here that says total employees. I'm going to select both of these, hit Shift A on them, and I'm going to select the icon and hit Shift A on it also. So with this, I'm going to hold Command and click on this padding section and give it a padding of, let's say, 20. Then I'm going to stretch it out until it fits the entire card. But as you can see, our card here is 137 in height, and for this frame I want it to be the same thing. So I'm going to come to the height here and click on fixed height, and I'm going to say 137, and I'm going to make sure the content is aligned left and center. So it fits in the frame perfectly. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to hold Alt, click and drag out. I'm going to make this a component so that I can replace its content for the rest of these 2 cards that we have on this. And to do that, first I'm going to make this particular icons components so that I can create an instance swap on it. So I'm going to click on create multiple components, and I'm going to go back to our card. I'm going to copy this, the first icon here, and paste to replace. I'm then going to click on this frame and make it a component. So for this, I'm going to select the icon part here, just the way we do this, create an instance swap. I'm going to remove these preferred values, or I'm going to add that preferred values. I think it's going to be really useful now. I'm going to add preferred values because I want us to have a selection of preferred values. I'm going to also check this new applicants, and I'm also going to look for this job opening because I want us to be able to pick from these cards the preferred values we need. And I do have a video on the channel about preferred values. You can go back and watch it. The link is going to be somewhere in the description. I'm going to go ahead to create property. Here I can just say card icon, and I'm going to click on create property. Here we can go ahead to add our text property. We can say card value, for instance, and for the text we can say card title. So once we have this, I can create an instance of this. I'm going to duplicate it, I'm going to cut it, then click on this entire frame, and I'm going to click on paste to replace. I'm going to do the same thing for this. I'm going to right click, I'm going to click on paste to replace, and then the third card I'm going to also paste to replace. But for the second here, I'm going to go to this icon section, and I'm going to switch the icon to job opening. I'm going to change the title here to job opening, and I'm going to change the figures to, let's say, 23. I'm going to go to the third card section here. I'm going to click on card icons. I'm going to click on new applicant icon. For the figures, I'm going to click 123, any random figures, and I'm going to change the title to new applicant. So we can see how useful the component properties are and the preferred values. So from here, I'm just going to pick the colors for each of these cards. This is card 3 color. I'm going to select that, and I'm going to go to the second card. I'm going to click on the fill, and I'm going to select card 2 color. So you can see how easily and quickly we get to design the contents of our card. So for this, I'm just going to paste in an already existing design. You can go ahead to do whatever suits what you're trying to achieve. And also for these two sections here, maybe some other time I'm going to talk about how to create graphs, but because this video is getting too long, I'm just going to paste in some of the contents we are going to be using. And for this section here, I'm also going to paste in the design for this section by right clicking and clicking paste to replace. So guys, this is it. In the next video, I'm going to show you guys how to create the tables, and also we are also going to continue working on some of these components of the dashboard. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you stick around as we are going to be creating more videos on designing admin dashboards and its components. So please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell if you haven't. And I'm going to see you in my next video. Bye for now.